All right, please have a seat. Okay, now let's start. I prepared the handout, but I forgot the prayers, so I'll do that for next time. So to start today, let's take a moment to set the right kind of motivation, generate a motivation that makes the study of this text most beneficial. Ideally, of course, the mind of enlightenment based on great compassion, the wish to benefit all sentient beings in the best possible way, which would be for ourselves to become fully enlightened. So let's take a moment to generate that motivation, to think, I'm here to study and reflect on this text for the welfare of every living being. Okay. All right. So next time we'll have a prayer or some prayers. We can do it together. Not very much, not very long. But for today, all I prepared is this handout. Now I need to say a few things about the handout. I didn't have one last year and I felt terribly unprepared. It's always easier to have something to look at the same time, and it really helped me to get more into the subject, more into the text. I've already sent it to you, but send it to you means those of you who are part of the WhatsApp groups, you probably got it. Hopefully you got it. If you're not part of, if you would like to be part of the WhatsApp group, please let us know after class. Anyway, I read the material anyway. If you don't want to join WhatsApp, we'll find another way to send it to you. You may want to print it out, that's up to you. We used to print out the material, we used to always print it out, but at this day and age I think it's better to just send off e-copies. Of course you could always get your own photocopy. If you go to Nimon's near the post office, he'll photocopy it for you. And yeah, so this handout, as many of you know, it contains a summary of what we did during the first term in April and May. Some preparatory explanation, it'll become clear why that is included. And what I haven't sent to you yet, you only got the first 36 pages, but what I'm going to send to you soon, probably this weekend, is from 37 onwards, page 37 onwards, and that contains the text. So what I did was, we're following mainly Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary called Illuminating the Intent. Some of you have bought the book, some of you have the Kindle edition or the Kindle version, and there's also a PDF floating around that we do make available to people if you don't pass it on to anyone. So these are the three options, but what I did was, in the handout, I copy-pasted the text into the handout. So basically you have the text right there. And it's an amazing translation that we're using. It's Geshe Thupten Jinpa's translation of the root text, Chandakirti's root text, plus his own explanation. And it's one of the most widely studied texts on Madhyamika in this particular tradition. So I copy-pasted his translation, but the translation is very close to the Tibetan, which is great, which is very important, but therefore difficult to understand at times. So you read it over and over and over again, and yes, you definitely get a sense what it's all about, but that's why I then decided on creating this handout. So I basically whatever I copy-pasted, I divided it into little sections, sometimes just a sentence or two, depending on the content, and wrote an explanation underneath it. So it's visible, you can identify the difference between what I say and what Lama Tsongkhapa writes. I mean, it's very obvious. So the thing is, I'm still not done yet. It's going to be about 120 or something pages. I have to work through some parts again. And it's also provisional, because first of all, it needs to be edited, but I had no one to do it in such a short time, so that'll come. But any of you, if you find mistakes, please say so. Also, if something is missing, if something is not clear, if it's redundant, please say so. Because I'm so absorbed into it, I lost sight of the whole thing. And anything from your side. So it's a work in progress, and I'm adjusting it as we go along. Those of you who know from Tushita, so anyone who was there, know, yeah, I had a handout then, and I kept just changing things. And in the end, we've got like a final version that I sent out. So that's the idea. Okay, great. And of course, as always, I want you to be very, very skeptical. That should be your motivation, besides, of course, the motivation we started this class with, to be totally skeptical, to always question whatever you hear. So in the spirit of this tradition, having that debating mind that based on logic, based on our own experience, always questions. Okay? And in that way, we can also have discussions. Is it working? Okay, great. So we can also have discussions, of course. I prefer to do them more towards the end. You can always ask any questions, like if you need to have anything clarified, please ask. You're welcome to ask for clarifications, but I'll prefer to keep the questions more towards the end. All right, that's it. So I'm going to start now with a summary of what we did the first time. Maybe the summary is a little longer than I would usually have in the future. Whenever we have a new term, there'll be a summary. This one I made a little longer because I think it's so important. The emphasis is on great compassion, on that incredibly beautiful mind. Now, of course, all the nitty-gritty details we went through last term, there's no need, there's no time to do it. But just to stick with the verses, with the individual verses, I think that's enough. And in that way you get a sense of what the beginning is all about. Just a sec. All right, so I'm not going to read everything. I mean, I tried to read bits, but not everything, because I'm just going to look at it and then try to talk directly. This time I was given a nicer introduction. Last time I was so ill-prepared. Didn't tell you anything about the text, like about the verses. I didn't say anything about Chandrakirti or Lama Tsongkhapa. Oh, one thing I need to remind myself of. Because one of my wonderful teachers, and he's also a teacher of many of you. I mean, he was one of our teachers at the IBD. He taught us in Tibetan, but now he teaches in English, Geshe Damdul, who says, don't just talk about Nagarjuna, don't just talk about Chandrakirti, he's not your classmate. Right? In Tibetan, you never just say Chandrakirti. You always use like an honorific, Banden Dawatra, Banden, the glorious one. Okay, glorious, that's a little bit too old-fashioned for my liking. So I used a Sanskrit term that is widely used, Acharya. And I made a point every time, and I'm so in the habit of not using them, so I was like, Nagarjuna, and I'm like, oh no, I said it again, so Arya Nagarjuna. Now it's in the text, I still have to go through it, kind of find the times when I forgot it. But now I have to get myself used to saying Acharya Chandrakirti. I mean, I know in modern kind of writing, sometimes when they talk about as holiness, they say Gyatso. Sorry, I'm just laughing. It's so different. Like in some of the writings, like for instance, in the past when the students from Emory University came and they had to write papers and I was part of that program, so I had to grade them. And they referred to His Holiness by his name, his actual name that no Tibetan really uses is Tenzin Gyatso. And then they said, Gyatso writes. They didn't say His Holiness, not at all. But that's just scholastic kind of writing, and it's fine. I didn't say anything. I mean, that's totally fine. But so that's one extreme. And the other is now I say Acharya, Acharya the whole time. It's not an extreme. I wouldn't call it an extreme. I think it's beautiful. And it doesn't make the text that much longer. It's maybe an extra page. So no worries. It's not going to be, we're not going to take so much longer because of these titles. But I'm trying to get used to it. So I already said Chandakirti. I meant to say Acharya Chandakirti. Anyway, I didn't tell you anything about him. The little that is known about him, I'll share it with you this time. All right, so I'll start right away with the text. Now we have two texts really here. One, of course, is Acharya Chandakirti's root text. In Tibetan, it's always talked about the root text, the root text. You always have a text that you mainly follow, and that is usually memorized. Don't worry, I'm not asking that of you, but we memorized it as part of our study. It's actually fun. And the thing is, I thought I can't memorize, and I was surprised I can, and I guess everyone can, really. So it's definitely a good practice, a good brain training, if you like. But anyway, so that's the root text by Acharya Chandakirti. That's the main text we're studying, but it's very terse. Just reading it on its own, very difficult to really understand what he meant. Therefore, you have other commentaries. Now, in the Tibetan tradition, you may notice there's a commentary of a commentary of a commentary of a commentary, and it seems really odd in the way you may feel, well, why not study the original text? Well, because it's so difficult. The style of teaching has changed. The meaning of certain words, they have changed. And therefore, to have a commentary in order to understand the root text, it's just really helpful. And they give these commentaries beautiful names like the golden key to open the treasure box of whatever, the silver key, and so forth. Sometimes they give that name like a key, for instance. Therefore here the root text is entering the middle way. And then fortunately we have a commentary that is pretty new in comparison to the root text. It's only from the 14th century, which is Lama Tsongkhapa's Illuminating the Intent. And it is still studied to this day. Very challenging, even if you speak Tibetan, if you study in Tibetan. It's written in a style that is quite different to spoken Tibetan. It's kind of like you still write in Shakespearean English, but you speak kind of contemporary English. That's how it feels with Tibetan. They write in a very different style than they speak, so their writing style is very different. So that's a challenge, but fortunately we have Geshe Tundjimpa who did such an amazing job to translate this text into contemporary English, but still a little difficult to understand because he's trying to be faithful to the original. Okay. So the root text, Entering the Middle Way, was composed in the 7th century by a great Nalanda master called Acharya Chandakirti. Here, the Nalanda master is the title. I didn't add Acharya. So the Nalanda master, Acharya Chandakirti. It's a work that has long been treasured in the Tibetan tradition of one of the most important Indian sources for studying Madhyamika, for studying the philosophy of the middle way. It consists of 330 verses. That's actually short, much longer ones, 400, 500, and so on. Relatively short. So each one has 4 lines, arranged into 11 chapters. The first 10 of these 11 chapters, they follow a consistent pattern because they're dedicated to one of the bodhisattva levels, bodhisattva grounds, as they're called. So it explains one of the different perfections or paramitas, which is a special bodhisattva practice, which each stage emphasizes a particular practice. We'll get to this. I've written a whole section on this, like, this is so advanced, why we're studying it. But you'll see there's a very good reason for doing so, because everything we study is relevant to us right now, even though it's very advanced, but they're simpler versions that we can do. So we need to learn about them. There's a whole section on that. You will get to this. But anyway, so the bodhisattva practices, such as generosity. I mean, everyone knows what generosity is. Generosity, morality, patience, those types of practices. So they're emphasized. In each chapter, a different one is emphasized. We start basically with generosity. The only exception is, so these are the first 10 chapters, and the 11th chapter is slightly different. It begins with 9 verses that just summarize. It's still working, despite the power cut. Is the streaming still working? Is it still? Okay, we'll find out. Oh, wow. Remember last term we had so many problems with that. Okay. The 11th being different, so first you have 9 verses, just summarize the qualities of these 10 bodhisattva practices or ground, and then you have 47 verses that describe the culmination of the bodhisattva practices, which is Buddhahood. Why are we doing this? What's the end result? What does it mean? And the 6th chapter, that's the most important one. It's devoted to the perfection of wisdom. It's most extensive, most important. That's why this particular text belongs to the middle way, or to the genre of teachings on the ultimate nature of phenomena, because it's on wisdom, it's on emptiness. And that means 226 verses. So of 330 verses, 226 are devoted to emptiness. Now, one thing I wanted to say in the beginning, and I forgot, but I just remembered. The problem with my handout is it's really extensive. It's so extensive. So I'm a little worried. But I'm thinking I have one luxury. What is my luxury? The luxury of time. No one is like telling me you have to finish by that time. No one is telling me, And the thing is, it's such a beautiful text. And a lot of the concepts that Lama Tsongkhapa just mentions, he may just say, faith. So what is faith? When we studied this text, we already studied for 7 years before we get into this text. So we already studied these concepts such as faith and, certain negativities we have to specifically watch out for and so forth. So like different examples. He just mentions them, I explained them. I thought just to give you, so whatever he mentions, I explain it to some degree. I mean, some things I explain it only once. But this is where my worry about being repetitive comes in. And please say so. If you feel like, you can leave that out. You've said it so many times. But I try to cut it down. I mean, not to be too repetitive. Sometimes when something hasn't been mentioned, I may just say a word or two about it, but I try to keep it down. But I've noticed I've put in a lot of explanation. But then I thought, okay, the worst that happens is I just don't read through it or don't go through it, and that's it. So in the end, I just delete it. Let's see. But just be warned, there's a lot. Okay, going back to this here. Okay, so the 6th chapter is the longest. It's nearly 70% of the whole text. Okay, so that's what we're really going to get into more details on. But even the beginning part, we didn't go through that, because when we debated it, we didn't spend that much time on it, because there isn't that much debate. But there's so much in there. I mean, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to write a handout, because suddenly I recognized ideas in there that I missed the first time. And of course, I've been listening to lots of classes from some of my teachers, and so they give such beautiful explanations, and I thought, well, whatever I felt was most relevant, I added it. So that's why it's quite extensive. But again, no deadline. So anyway, the other chapters are therefore very short in comparison, sometimes containing just a few lines. And the 10 chapters, the first 10 chapters, they're traditionally called first awakening mind, second awakening mind. That's how you call them in Tibetan, which corresponds to the sequence of the Bodhisattva grounds. They're also called first awakening mind, second awakening mind, and so forth. The only exception to the names of the chapters is the 11th chapter, of course, which is sometimes referred to presentation of the resultant Buddha ground. Or commonly, I don't know, some call it this and others call it something else. Anyway, so you have the outline of the chapters right here. You can just look at the handout, how many verses for each chapter. I don't know, it's not that important, but I like it. You know, like 17 for the first, 10 for the second, 226 for the sixth, as you already know. Sometimes it's just half a line or 3 lines, 2 lines, yeah. Okay. All right, so that's the text itself. That's what we're going to study. So what about the author, Acharya Chandakirti? Well, the thing is, it's very little known about him. You know, they have these stories, and sometimes you're like, you know, it's like it's supposed to inspire us. So I don't know how realistic they are. There's a word for that kind of style of biographies. There's this particular word they use, which saying there's some facts, but they're mixed with other kind of inspiring part that you don't know, is it true or not? But anyway, I didn't want to go into a hagiography. That's it, a hagiography. That's the name of a biography that's mixed with kind of stories. You don't know how realistic they are. Anyway, so with regard to Acharya Chandakirti's life, at least in terms of what modern scholars agree on, I guess, so he lived in India during the 7th century, likely in the latter half, not sure, and is said to have been born in the southern part of India. And he was a monk and became renowned as a great scholar and a dedicated meditator. And he was very committed to Arya Nagaja. But it's definitely one of the most famous, his work, Fundamental Wisdom, is definitely one of the most famous work, if not the most famous work on emptiness. Okay. So therefore this text, Fundamental Wisdom, is seen as the cornerstone of Mahayana philosophy. Oh, Mahayana. I really tried to say, I tried to not, Madhyamika. Oh, I said Madhyamika. Sorry, that's a mistake. It should not say Madhyamika. I don't like to use the word Madhyamika anyway. It's better to say universal, but this is a mistake. So it should be Madhyamika philosophy. So that's really the cornerstone. All right. Anyway, so Acharya Chandakirti's text is based on this particular root text. All right. And so who translated it? Okay, that may be interesting to talk about. How did it get to Tibet? Well, it was brought to Tibet, of course, during the time, the 7th, 8th century. That's when Indian Buddhism came to Tibet. Very important period that also His Holiness the Dalai Lama often mentions. So it was first translated by a disciple of Jowa Atisha, by the Guru. His name, Tibetan name, of course, is Naktsolo Tsawa. You'll notice sometimes I put footnotes and it explains. Ooh, thank you. Just as we got the hotspot arranged and the power's back, of course. So anyway, Naktsolo Tsawa, he translated, he was the disciple of Jowa Atisha. Yeah, so I put some footnotes when didn't fit, when the details on whoever they were didn't really fit in the whole, put footnotes. You can read about Jowa Atisha, about who was not Nakzo Lotsawa, if you're interested. That was the first translation, but they also had a second one by Batsa Lotsawa. Yeah, a century later, it was Batsa Lotsawa, and that is said to be a better translation. He also translated other texts by Acharya Chandrakirti that are important. There are actually two important ones. One is the one we're studying, and the other one is called Clear Words. Both explain Arya Naga, but it's called a word text. That's the literal translation from the Tibetan. A word text means he went through the text word by word, which is beautiful, which is incredible. But actually entering the middle way, it's called a meaning text, which does describe the meaning of what Arya Nagarjuna talked about, but at the same time it brings in the bodhisattva practices of great compassion, of generosity and so forth, to give us a fuller picture of what to do with emptiness, how it's relevant. So it inspires us. It inspires us from the point of view of the method side, and explains how the understanding of emptiness is not just a dry analysis, but is actually seen as an altruistic activity for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that's why, therefore, the entering the middle way, which has been translated by Batsa Lotsawa, the second translation, which is said to be the better translation, that is said to be more important, because even it's just a meaning commentary, it's said to be more helpful. Okay. An interesting fact maybe that you find interesting, I'm not sure how interesting you find it, but Batsa Lotsawa, he's also by Tibetan and Western scholars, this particular translator, who went to India, learned Sanskrit, and then went back to Tibet to translate these important texts without dictionaries, without all the means we have nowadays. It's become so much easier to be a translator. They risked their life traveling to India, literally, because they had diseases in India they didn't have in Tibet. And there are stories of 108 translators being sent to India and 20 survived. That's pretty serious, isn't it, right? And the other way around, for people to travel to Tibet, they died of the cold. Just think of the harshness of the Tibetan plateau. Yeah, so there's a lot of emphasis on these translators. They were so amazing because of the hardships and the sacrifices they underwent just for us to have these teachings available now. And their translations are so good. They are so precise. Anyway, so he's also actually Batsa Lotsawa. He's credited for coining the terms Prasangika and Svatantrika. For the two terms, Prasangika and Svatantrika. Anyway, so that's enough for the first part, and then you have, of course, illuminating the intent. That beautiful text by Lama Tsongkhapa, which spans roughly 500 pages in English translation. It's a monumental work. It took, I think, about 20 years to translate it into English. Geshe Kelsang wasn't just doing that, he was also translating other books. But yeah, it took so much time, because to have a faithful translation that at the same time is readable, that's a challenge when it comes to Lama Tsongkhapa's writings. He manages to complete a sentence over a whole page. It's he writes a whole, one sentence, it covers an entire page. Now you have to know how to separate this sentence into other sentences and connect them. It's not easy. So yeah, Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, it was completed just a year, and that's the commentary, I'm not talking about the translation any longer. So that was completed a year before Lama Tsongkhapa's passing in 1419. And ever since that time, it has served as the principal textbook So that's the principal textbook we study. And it has been studied for more than 600 years in Tibetan monastic institutions of the Gelug tradition. So incredible. Shaping the training of monks, nuns, and lay practitioners alike. So it's amazing that they've passed this on. And that's why it's so great, because the debate, it keeps it alive. The debate is so amazing. It keeps all this alive. So it benefits greatly our own mental development in so many different ways. Psychologically, it's incredible. But it also keeps the meaning of what Lama Tsongkhapa talked about alive, because it's passed on from one debater to the next, to the next, to the next. The teachers, of course, pass it on to the students become teachers themselves, pass it on to their students. So in that way, it doesn't get lost. This whole tradition is still full alive. I'm pretty sure what we debated was debated 600 years ago, right? Because they're passed down, these different doubts people have, and maybe there's some new ones as well. There's definitely some development, but in the end, you do cover, you do touch the most important bits that are so helpful for our own understanding, but also relevant for passing on a living tradition. So Lama Tsongkhapa, the author Lama Tsongkhapa, in Tibetan usually called Je Rinpoche. Je Rinpoche is one way to refer to him, but I thought that was too much Tibetan for my liking. Although Lama Tsongkhapa is just as much Tibetan, but at least we're more used to saying Lama. Tsongkhapa refers to the area he comes from, Tsongkha. So he's the one from Tsongkha. Tsongkha. Tsong means onion, by the way. He's the one from the onion. Sounds better in Tibetan. Lama Tsongkhapa. I believe that's the spelling, yeah. Tsongkha. He's known as the founder of what is called the Gelug tradition or Gelug school. Emphasized very much monastic discipline. He studied with all the teachers of the time. At the time when he was around, there were the 3 traditions that you still have nowadays. He studied with teachers from those traditions and started a new tradition, a 4th one. Like he was like a reformist. He made some changes to the existing traditions that are just as beautiful and just as accurate in their descriptions of the Dharma. But for some people, it's more suitable. It's just a matter of preference. We also studied some of the traditions for some time, and I had a hard time. I just didn't have the same connection to these traditions. But I know some people, like, they study the Gelug tradition and they have a hard time with that. They're like, this does not make sense to me, the other explanations. So it's really just a matter of preference. They use different vocabulary, or they use words. No, the vocabulary is pretty much the same, but they use it slightly differently. The emphasis may be different. So it's not one is better than the other. It just depends what you prefer. So he anyway started this particular tradition. Basically the root text by Acharya Chandrakirti is interwoven. It's kind of part of illuminating the intent, which is very helpful. What he did was he based his explanations mainly on, of course, the root text, but also very kindly Acharya Chandrakirti composed an auto-commentary. Those are great, auto-commentaries. It's like first he composes this super terse, difficult to understand root text, and then he says, don't worry, this is what I meant. And writes like in prose, he writes like this auto-commentary. And in that way, it's like, oof, I have no idea what he was talking about, but now I get it. So Lama Tsongkhapa took that auto-commentary, and sometimes he literally quotes from that. Now, without reading the auto-commentary, it's like you read the auto-commentary, it's like, but I read that somewhere before. Oh, that was Lama, because it's all part of the commentary. And he also adds his own reflections. So bringing in certain debates, some disagreements, his own opinions sometimes. Okay. He also draws on other writings, of course, Acharya Chandrakirti's other writings. Incredible, the different texts he brings in. Arya Nagarjuna's many different commentaries or different texts he wrote. They all come in, but it's not like confusing. He just mentions something he finds relevant and then explains it. So it seems confusing when you hear this now, but when you read it, it doesn't really, it's not a problem. And what he also does, he compares the two translations by Natsu-Lotsawa and Patsa-Lotsawa. That's also quite nice. So it's an incredibly extensive work. Plus, there's only one Indian commentary that has survived on Acharya Chandrakirti's root text. Only one. Maybe there were more, but the one that made it to Tibet and was translated is by someone called Jayananda. That is also part of what sometimes Lama Tsongkhapa mentions, even if he disagrees with him. He's very respectful and then says, well, but this point I don't agree with. Okay, anyway. But it's just the way the way things were taught. It was like, you disagree with each other, no problem. It seems like a criticism to us, but it's always done with utmost respect for the other tradition. But then just saying, I don't agree with it, no, and then the other person may respond to that criticism in another work. And so they have sometimes, between different writings, different texts, there are like debates going on that continue over the centuries. Quite interesting. But of course, those are not that extensive. Most important debates are, of course, our own debates. And you can do them with other people. That's very, very helpful. But if you don't have anyone to debate with, you can with yourself. It's kind of a kind of analysis, basically. Or with other people, like with other people getting together and just discussing, even if it's not in the same style. It's still extremely helpful. All right, so I said a little bit about Jayananda, 11th, 12th century. It's kind of interesting. He went to Tibet, actually. He actually went to Tibet and then returned to India at some point. Anyway, that's too much. I don't want to say too much about this source and that source. I want to get to the actual material. I think that's enough. You can read it if you're interested. Oh, one more thing. The root text now is part of the English translation, because also in the Tibetan editions of Illuminating the Intent of Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, they started to add the root text as well. They didn't use that. The first copy I got from Illuminating the Intent didn't have the root text. That was so annoying. I found that really annoying, because you don't know, oh, is it this verse now? Is it that verse? So I kind of highlighted it. I had this red pen, and whenever there was a syllable from the root text, I put a dot. And sometimes in the margins, I would write down the root text, so I knew. But then eventually they started printing new versions, and now they have the root text, which is not part of Lama Tsongkhapa's original text, but it's so helpful. And the same was done in the English translation. You have both together, so no problem. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so that's it. Seen in this way, Illuminating Intent represents the culmination of Lama Tsongkhapa's lifelong study and reflection. So it's one of his most important commentaries. So it's a real honor that we study this together. Okay, in Tibetan the title is actually Gompa Rapsel, which is, it literally means the intent clearly illuminated. The intent or the thought clearly illuminated. So in other words, here the first word means the intended meaning or profound thought of a text, whereas Rapsel kind of means to thoroughly illuminate it. So the title conveys Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary brings out Acharya Chandrakirti's true intent in a way that is both precise and accessible. So illuminating the intent, clearly setting forth, clearly explaining the actual thought behind Acharya Chandrakirti's work. So what did Acharya Chandrakirti mean when he said whatever he said? Okay. Now, Illuminating the Intent has three parts. First, there's an introductory section that we did during the last term. Then there's the introductory section plus the first 5 chapters, the other chapters, so first 5 chapters basically, including the preliminary section. Then there's the 6th chapter, that's the second part, and the rest, right? First part, kind of introductory, second part, main part, third part, the rest. That's how you can roughly divide it. And Lama Tsongkhapa did an amazing job. He added all these, he divided his own commentary in many different sections, and each section was given an outline, like a heading. Each outline was divided into different sections or outlines, and each was given a heading, which on first reading it seems confusing, but what we did was we didn't just memorize the root text, we also memorized these headings. So once you memorize it, it becomes very clear in your mind. Oh, this is this part, this is this part. This section has 2 subsections. And it's all very clear in your mind. It's incredible. It's like this internal map. It's like you have an internal kind of framework, and then you just fill in the details. Yeah, it's confusing when you first see it. And memorization, the thing about memorization, it's not just becoming like a parrot, right? Like just memorizing, but it has the effect on your mind that you understand it better. You repeat it over and over again. You start seeing a structure. You start seeing a pattern. And somehow, because you repeat it over and over again, because it's so much easier to forget than to memorize. Doesn't take long. So that's the only thing I hate about memorizing, that you forget so easily. So you have to go back and back and back and do it again. I mean, I don't hate it, but it's kind of annoying. I wish I had like photographic memory, kind of put it here and it's always accessible. Well, some people do, but I just don't. So therefore, when you memorize it, yeah, you understand. It really helps your understanding. So Lama Tsongkhapa, the way he starts, and we did that last year, no need to go over it, but in good old fashion, he begins his commentary with an homage, like remembering his teacher, remembering his own Buddha Shakyamuni, Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, the great Nalanda masters, just mentioning them. And then he followed by 2 verses to like a promise to compose the text, which is the old style. Right? First pay homage, like kind of saying, oh, I'm not saying I'm so great, I write this. No, everything I know is because of them. Remembering that kindness, connecting to these great masters. It's a wonderful practice in humility, but it also puts us in touch with what we've learned with these great masters. And then there's the promise to compose the text. First I was like, in the very beginning when I first heard about it, I was like, why? Why? A promise to compose a text. But then I realized, because the reason they give is usually, once you make that promise, you try to keep that promise. It's like, it's written in stone, they say. It's like, it's written in stone, you really keep it. And thinking of myself, you know, like I sometimes started this and I started that and I never brought it to completion. And I'm like, oh yeah, that promise is helpful. So you write in the beginning and then you complete it. Okay, anyway, so he does that. And then the next part, and now we get right into the text, what they start with is the meaning of the title. In English we go, the title? Just choose a catchy title and move on. But it doesn't work like that. In the Tibetan texts, they're not catchy title. Or maybe they were catchy at their time. Now they just seem terribly long. Sometimes they're really, really long. And usually you choose like a shorter version of that, like the main words. So illuminating the intent is not too bad. But yeah, there are texts, like they have really long names, but it's considered important because if you think about the fact that, well, I'm not sure this is true, but thinking logically, especially when these root texts were composed, paper was very precious. It's not easy to find pen and paper basically, and then you had no typing devices, you had to write it by hand, and you made a mistake, you had to probably rewrite the whole thing. So in the very beginning, before printing presses and so forth, therefore you used everything, whatever means you had to convey a certain meaning, and that was part of the title as well. So the title was supposed to in itself give you a teaching, which is why you have a whole section on the title. So regarding the title, Acharya Chandragupta's root text, in Sanskrit it's Madhyamika Vatara, in Tibetan Umala Jukpa, In English, entering the middle way. And here, middle way, which is a little confusing, doesn't refer necessarily to the ultimate nature of all phenomena, but it's also used here, and sometimes it's confusing, to refer to the root text, which is Arya Nagarjuna's text. Okay, so in Acharya Chandrakirti's auto commentary, it says, in the middle way it says. From that you know, in the middle way it says, it's not talking about emptiness, it's talking to you, but it's rather saying, in the middle way treatise, in the middle way text. And sometimes he says middle way treatise, but sometimes he just says in the middle way. Okay, so he enters into the middle way means, in a way, of course, also, you know, the middle way as in like emptiness, but also Arya Nagarjuna's text. That's the middle way. That's what we're trying to understand through Acharya Chandrakirti. So it's like the decodifier, you know, it's like all in code. Honestly, Arya Nagarjuna's text is also really, really difficult. Just a few words crammed together. No, I shouldn't put it that way. But you know, like, I don't know, 8 syllables put together in each line, and it's more about the meter, right? And then you're not supposed to, it's okay. Not supposed to means, well, it's okay if you don't understand it. That's why you go to a class. You memorize it, go to a class, and then you've memorized it, it's right there. And you can meditate on it. You can debate on it. Therefore, it's so helpful to have Acharya Chandrakirti's text, because he enters into the middle way. He engages in that text, so we understand it. We understand what Arya Nagarjuna is talking about. Here, the verb to enter is also sometimes translated as to engage. So engage with Arya Nagarjuna's text. And it can be understood in 2 ways, depending on perspective. It means, first of all, entering into the middle way means to explain Arya Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, explaining it. That's the main goal, explaining it by supplementing it with further explanations. So basically, Acharya Chandrakirti, the root text we're studying here, it's called entering into the middle way, or entering the middle way, or engaging in the middle way, whichever translation you choose, because it's saying this text explained what Arya Nagarjuna was teaching in these incredible verses on emptiness, but it supplements it with other explanations that give you a fuller picture of what is all this about. Okay? So that's what it means. In relation to this text, it means that entering the middle way explains Arya Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom by supplementing it with further explanations. So you can see it from the point of view of the text itself, but you can also see it in relation to us. We should also enter the middle way. The text enters the middle way so that we enter the middle way. That's usually what the commentaries say. So we should also enter, that is by studying, reflecting, and meditating on Acharya Chandrakirti's text. We therefore also, hopefully, if we do it right, study, reflect on, and meditate on Arya Nagarjuna's text. Right? So it's through that. In this sense, entering the middle way both clarifies and extends Arya Nagarjuna's root treatise. It does so by adding explanations on 2 fronts. It explains, what does it add? It adds 2 things. It adds to the wisdom side, things that haven't been explained yet. For instance, the fact that all phenomena are merely labeled, that everything exists because it's designated by the mind. Arya Nagarjuna doesn't mention it to that degree, doesn't go into that. Acharya Chandrakirti does. Very important to understanding emptiness. So in that way, it supplements, it adds something. And very importantly, it also adds to the explanation of the vast aspect. What is great compassion? What is bodhicitta? Right? In that way, it expands just what is the bodhisattva path? What are the other practices? So that's just a short version of that. I'm going through it a little faster. So on the method side, therefore, It greatly expands the discussion to encompass the entire Bodhisattva path. Okay, what are the key factors needed for us to enter the path? What do we have to mainly practice? That's part of what we're going to go through today as part of the summary. What are the main 3 things we need? 2 of these, as Holness mentions all the time. 1 is kind of implied. It's actually not that difficult. 3 things, but they're so difficult to put into practice. All right. Okay. So I'm again going through a few bits here. I don't think are that, well, they are important, but you can read them and understand them. So please read them at your own time. Go through the handout. Hopefully you understand. Has anyone read it beforehand? Has anyone read the text before?
Yeah.
Could you understand it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit. Okay.
No, it's very good summary. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. For those of you who were here last term, it's probably easier. Yeah, hopefully, because I'm jumping here a little bit, but it's more about the title and supplementing it and so forth. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I want to get more into right compassion. That's why I'm a little faster here, fast tracking. So, okay, so the title, Entering the Middle Way, conveys a twofold purpose. It shows that the text eliminates the meaning of the fundamental wisdom, while at the same time expanding it by integrating the profound view of emptiness, expanding more on that, and vast bodhisattva practices that complete the bodhisattva path, or the path to enlightenment. Okay, so that's the title, Entering the Middle Way. Explaining Nagarjuna's root text, and in that way explaining emptiness by supplementing it. What comes after the title in the Tibetan text is the homage, the translator's homage. Now it's not Chandrakirti's words of remembering something, maybe their own teacher and so forth. No, here it's the translator's homage. That's just customary. So I pay homage to the gentle Lord Manjushri, to the Buddha of compassion, Buddha of wisdom. Perfect. We start a text on emptiness that mainly deals with emptiness. Well, you started with the paying homage to the embodiment of all the wisdom of the Buddhas, usually expressed by saying Manjushri, in the form of Manjushri. All right. So in the Tibetan tradition, translators, or lotsawas, lotsawa is actually a better word for translator. It's kind of an honorific for someone who underwent the hardships of these lotsawas, these translators at the time, traveling to India with next to nothing, sacrificing their health or even their life, and returning to translate these precious texts in a very consistent way. So anyways, here I added the word lotsawas. They're translated primarily from Sanskrit into Tibetan, and they often began their translations with an homage that highlights the principle, with an homage, that highlights the principal subject matter of the text. So by paying homage to Manjushri, Bhattacharya Lotsawa signals that this treatise is above all an exposition of wisdom, or more specifically, of the middle way understanding emptiness. So we know already, kind of a short content saying I pay homage to Manjushri, therefore we know, wisdom. Okay. And then the meaning of the treatise itself. Now we're actually getting into the text. Now Acharya Chandrakirti is talking to us directly. First, he presents his own homage, his own salutation, as Geshe Kelsang calls it, the salutation. Then there's the actual body of the text, the way in which then there's a short part about the manner in which the treatise is composed, and dedicating the merit. That's the entire text. Okay, that's the root outlines. But I'm not going to go into all these, but just to hear it once, right? First, salutation, the actual body of the text, and then just the manner in which the treatise was composed, and dedication of merit. And obviously, the second part is really the largest part, the second part. The salutation is what I'm going to go through today. So this salutation is so special. It's mentioned again and again in so many teachings. It's mentioned that this is very special. It's given special attention because, first of all, it sets the tone of the entire treatise. What is so important here? And what is unusual is, compared to many other treatises, is that Acharya Chandrakirti does not pay homage to a Buddha or to an advanced practitioner like heroes, solitary realizers, or bodhisattvas, but to great compassion. He is paying homage to great compassion. Usually it's a person, right? Your teacher or some great scholars, some great masters of the past. Makes sense, but great compassion? That's unusual. Okay. By doing so, Acharya Chandrakirti emphasizes that in the universal vehicle being that which takes us to full awakening or Buddhahood, insight into the middle way is not confined to realizing the ultimate nature of all phenomena, but it must also be sustained by the altruistic motivation to benefit all sentient beings. That should be our motivation. Dhamma will mention this many times. This should be our motivation. Don't just read it, practice it. Otherwise you become like a parrot. He says more towards the end. He says, if you study this text and you explain it to others without practicing it yourself, you're just a parrot. Pretty straightforward, right? So it's like, sometimes people say, oh, in this tradition, but people don't practice. Well, just read what the masters say and then decide you want to practice or not. Become a parrot or something better, right? It's so beautiful, and I stress it again and again. He puts so much emphasis on, this is not just for understanding. I mean, these are tools, debating, discussing them. These are tools for understanding, but you have to internalize it. You have to practice this. And what is more beautiful than great compassion? It's so incredible. It's where we turn 180 degrees from what? Me, to all sentient beings. That's huge. We're so good at me, right? We had it since we were born, or to put it more eloquently, I, me, and mine, right? And then the emphasis suddenly on all other sentient beings. And why? Well, it'll be explained why. You want to be happy? That's the only way. But it's so beautifully explained. Okay. So, it must also be, so therefore, just learning about emptiness is not enough. Why are we doing this? Not just for our own benefit, for the benefit of every sentient being. That may sound strange, but it's like you get used to it. You hear it again and again and again, and then you try to do it yourself and you fake it until you make it. This is not, a lot of the practices we do, they're fake in the beginning, but we do them anyway. And at some point it becomes natural, it becomes second nature. You're so used to it. You've been familiarized so much that the mind can actually change incredibly. Well, modern science definitely supports that. Neuroplasticity, duh, right? Our brain can change. Doesn't matter how old you are, the brain changes all the time. But how does it change? Because the mind changes. The mind meditates, the brain changes. The mind memorizes, the brain changes. The mind reads a book, the brain changes. So, because the mind can change, therefore, the brain can. I mean, if the brain couldn't change, the change of the mind would be useless. I mean, in order to be able to do certain things, of course our brain has to change. But mind and brain are not the same thing. Very strongly interrelated, but the mind is just, we label mind, we give the label mind to the experiencing aspect. We experience something, you see something, you hear something, you notice the temperature of this room. Your brain allows you to do that, helps you to do that, but the experiencing itself, we label that mind. Right? It's just a different phenomenon, that experiencer. The brain doesn't experience, the brain enables us to experience. And both are plastic, they can change. The beautiful thing is, well, unfortunately, one disadvantage is it's not that fast. It really takes time. Change takes time, but it happens. It's possible. So you can have an ordinary person change into someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We can all do that. We all have the same basic mind. Or like the Buddha. Okay, now we need to understand, with this in mind, and we don't do it just for ourselves, because we've been doing this just for ourselves. We've been doing everything we've ever done mainly for ourselves, and see what it brings, see where it gets us, right? We're still stuck, have very little freedom, controlled by afflictions. We want lasting happiness, we just don't find it. So it's a good time now to say, okay, I've tried that approach for a long time. Okay, it brings me stuff, yes, there are certain results of that, but definitely not what I'm looking for. If you're looking for great unhappiness and uncertainty, go ahead, be self-centered. That's the best way to do it, right? If you really want to be miserable, be a little bit more self-centered. It works really well. But the thing is, of course, our mind doesn't work like that. We want to be satisfied. We want to be happy. We want to find inner peace. And self-centeredness is not going to do it, unfortunately. It'd be nice. I'd be really good at finding happiness now. Right? Okay. So therefore, this focus on great compassion, saying that given the way phenomena exist at the deepest level, in fact, compassion is a logical necessity. It's not just that it makes us happy and all that, but given the way phenomena exist, it doesn't make sense not to be compassionate. It doesn't make sense to just focus on our own self. It's a logical necessity not only for fulfilling our deepest wish for lasting happiness or lasting peace and genuine satisfaction, but also for actualizing our fullest potential. We have these incredible abilities we haven't even tapped into. We have no clue. And the degree of well-being that we could actually experience, no idea yet. What is great compassion? So what are we looking at here? Great compassion. It needs to be defined to some degree. It's an affectionate mind that sincerely wishes all sentient beings to be free from every kind of suffering, any kind of samsaric suffering, together with its underlying causes and all other limitations. Any mental limitations, I should say limitations should be mental limitations. Okay, I'm just adding it as I go along. All other mental limitations, while also aspiring personally to protect them and help them overcome these obstructions. So taking personal responsibility, not just wishing them. This is an interpretation, not everyone agrees with this, but when you read Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, which we're doing, there he actually says that. Great compassion wishes to also protect other sentient beings. So in the foundational vehicle, that is mainly, the practices here are mainly focused on self or personal liberation or self-liberation. I believe you have the wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering and its causes, definitely. But taking that personal responsibility, I personally will do something. I personally will give my mind, my body, my mind, my everything to help other sentient beings to achieve that. That is different. That's a special motivation that goes deeper. And that doesn't mean that the other motivation is not incredible. I mean, it's like so beyond our self-centered mind, of course. But the point is that in this foundational vehicle, it creates the foundation of this. So it's the foundation, it's everything we need. The foundational vehicle is so important because it gives us the foundation to then practice whatever is needed to actualize our fullest potential in the form of Buddhahood. And everyone will become a Buddha from the point of view of this tradition. Even if you choose to be personally liberated first, eventually everyone will become a Buddha. At least has the potential, but also reaches that state. Okay. Anyway, great compassion is therefore defined in that way. Wish for all sentient beings to get rid of all the crap, of everything that's not in the nature of our mind, right? That's not in the nature of our mind. It's not supposed to be there. It's just temporary. It's adventitious, as in like, it's not part of our mind really. In the same way, when you have water and you add some mud, It's not part of the water. It's not part of H2O. H2O, it's been a while I said that. H2O. It's not part of H2O. That's why you can remove the mud and have clear water. The same is true for our mind. Our self-centeredness is not in the nature of our mind. It can be removed. It feels very natural right now. But muddy water can feel very natural. Doesn't mean that you can't remove the mud from the water. So similarly here, it feels so much part of who I am. My self-centeredness, my anger and so forth. But one of the first things we learn is it's not in the nature of the mind. We can remove it. We can absolutely remove it. There are ways to do so. But we first have to recognize it. That's why we learn. We study these type of texts. Okay, so the salutation here praises compassion, but of course it does more so. It explains it as well. But first it talks about great compassion in general, and then it talks about 3 different types. Okay, so praising great compassion in general, just talking about it in general. In the first 2 verses, where am I? Yep, okay. The beginning part is a little fast. I'm going through it fast because it's just a summary. This class and next class, I'm pretty sure next class we can already start with the next material. But in the first 2 verses, Acharya Chandrakirti pays homage to great compassion in a general sense, without distinguishing its 3 categories or its 3 forms. These verses are very powerful because they go beyond simple praise. They present great compassion as the very foundation of all Buddhist practice. It's the foundation of everything, every Buddhist practice. That again has 2 sections. One is how compassion is the principal cause of bodhisattvas, and how compassion is also the root of the other 2 causes of bodhisattvas. Okay, I had to first think for a moment because I didn't bring in all the outlines. I got confused, but yeah, this is correct. All right, now let's read together the first verse, and you understand why we need a commentary. Shravakas and middle-level Buddhas arise from sovereign sages. Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas, the compassionate mind and non-dual cognition, as well as the awakening mind. These are the causes of bodhisattvas. What? Okay. Now, what does that say? The first line. The first line says, Shravakas and middle-level Buddhas arise from sovereign sages. Here I don't use the Sanskrit word. The Sanskrit term Shravaka, I use the word hira, called hira. And then there's solitary realizer. These are basically 2 types of practitioners whose main goal for the time being is personal liberation, getting out of samsara, getting out of it. Hiras, to put it briefly, and there'll be a short explanation on what it means, but hiras are basically those who are more social, and solitary realizers are less social. So more social practitioners and less social practitioners. That's probably an easy way to put it. There's more details to it, of course. But bodhisattvas always have to be social. So you don't have that distinction because bodhisattvas are, from the beginning, others. They're so concerned for the benefit of other sentient beings. They may take some time off, to do some solitary retreat just to train their mind and not to have their afflictions run wild, because they still have them for quite a while. I mean, even bodhisattvas have afflictions. But their main goal is still to be with other sentient beings. So they're, in that sense, you don't have a distinction between more social and less social. I guess that's my take on it. So the first line of this verse shows how hearers and solitary realizers depend on Buddhas. Okay, they depend on Buddhas. Okay, so sovereign sages is just another word for Buddha. It's actually literally powerful, able ones. Sovereign sages sounds better, that's for sure. But it literally means powerful, able ones. So while the middle-level Buddha, while the term middle-level Buddhas, it refers to solitary realizers. Okay, so Shravakas, hearers and solitary realizers, they arise from Buddhas. That's really what it says. The point is that the practices of the foundational vehicle, the practices that take you to personal liberation, they do not arise on their own. They develop only because a Buddha first presents the teachings that reveal the path to liberation. Right? You need to have a Buddha first introducing some teachings. It's not like you can figure it out yourself. That's the claim here. As ordinary people, we need the guidance of a Buddha. We won't be able to one day just get there on our own. We need some help. Just as now we can speak perfectly, but unless someone taught us how to speak, I don't think there's a single child that can teach themselves without ever hearing language, ever hearing anyone else who can speak. Right? Children can do a lot, but I don't think they can do that. I wonder how far it goes about standing up. Unless you see someone else standing up, I don't think you can actually learn it. I mean, I don't think on your own, unless you've ever seen it, if you spend a lot of time around squirrels, you may be able to stand up. Which reminds me of this funny documentary I watched. It was about what are these really fast animals? Cheetahs. There's this cheetah that was around. This animal would sit like that. It was not a squirrel. It's like a similar animal. And the cheetah, because it was always hanging out with that other animal, the cheetah was also sitting like that. You have this, they have like a large, long body. They run so fast. And every time like you see something, he goes up and he looks around. It's so hilarious. I haven't seen a tiger do that. Maybe they're too heavy. The cheetah's kind of thin. But it's just like, wow, we do learn from others. And in this case, it wasn't a squirrel. I forget the name of the animal, but it was watching this animal and it turned out doing the same thing. So likewise, we learn from others, of course. We learn to speak, we learn we learn to get up and so forth. But the point is here, therefore, okay, all this we need to learn from others to read and write, etc. They have developed, of course, but it was not like one day one human could just read and write. That's impossible. It was a slow development. So here the claim is that similar to this example, to attain liberation, you need a Buddha. To attain liberation. So that could be debated. That's the claim here. By relying on and practicing the teachings that the Buddha has given, hearers and solitary realizers can achieve their goal of freedom from samsara. This dependence does not require a personal encounter with the Buddha. So don't worry. Oh, done with. We haven't met the Buddha. Okay, can't do anything. No. That's good news. So it doesn't require a personal encounter with the Buddha or direct guidance from one. It's enough that the Buddha's teachings are preserved and transmitted through others. Through others who've also practiced them, ideally like from someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who may be a Buddha, but is not the Buddha, right? Who introduced the teachings to this world. Therefore, even those who seek only personal liberation can ultimately trace their path back to a Buddha's compassionate activity. Okay, so here solitary realizers need Buddhas. That's the first one. Oh, and what now follows, forgot I put it here, but it's a short descriptions of hearers and solitary realizers. So we hear so much about them. When we study, before we study this text as part of the traditional Geshe study, we first learn what hearer and solitary realizers are. There's like a whole chapter or like a whole section when you study a text called Ornament for the Clear Realizations by Maitreya. It's the second chapter of that, and that goes into solitary realizers and by implication also into hearers. And there's also in the first chapter, there's a whole section on the different types of, the 20 different types of sanghas, which is really like different types of hearers, basically. Right? All right. So, what are the hearers? I've lost it just now. What are hearers? What does it even mean, a hearer? So, a hearer, Shravaka in Sanskrit. There'll be a short explanation what it literally means. And then in Tibetan, it's Nyen Tu. Nyen Tu. Nyen means listen, Tu means listen. No, Nyen means listen. Listen, and Tu means hear. So the one who listens and hears. Well, they listen to a lot of teachings, basically, by the Buddha. I guess that's how and it will become clearer later on with the Sanskrit explanation. So they are practitioners who've cultivated renunciation in accordance with the Hira vehicle. So they've developed, this is an important wording, it sounds like, that sounds weird. Just say cultivate the renunciation, be done with it. But there are different types of renunciation. We may develop renunciation, but it doesn't mean we are hearers. What is renunciation? What is renunciation? And I'm not talking about the ordinary usage of the word renunciation. No. Here we borrow the English term, and it's defined in a very specific way in the Tibetan tradition, or in the Buddhist tradition, I should say. What is renunciation? Does anyone dare to define it?
To generate a strong wish to get rid of miseries.
To generate the strong wish to
get rid of miseries.
To get rid of misery.
Or affliction.
Well, then I have renunciation. My mom's cat has renunciation. My mom's cat wants to be rid of misery. I just have to watch it. Everyone wants to get rid of misery, right? So it's a good definition. It's in a way it's good, but it's not. It doesn't include enough because we all want to be free from suffering. No one likes to suffer. So if you ask anyone, you want to be free from misery? Yes. We do everything to avoid misery, basically, at the cost of others, well-being. So we all have that. No, there's more to it. What is renunciation? So wanting to be free of misery, yeah, that's included. And yes? Oh, I looked like it was, yeah.
Causes of misery. I don't want to create any causes of misery anymore.
The causes of misery, that's very important. So not just misery, but also its causes. That's important. Did you want to add something?
I wanted to say kind of the opposite. Someone who has developed great compassion.
Yeah.
So who doesn't have any attachments anymore.
Okay, yeah, actually, if you have great compassion, you must have renunciation. Before you can generate, and we go through it, before you can generate great compassion, you must generate renunciation. What does the wish of great compassion include? Think of the first part. You want for all sentient beings to be free from suffering and its causes and all other limitations. Right? The other limitations we haven't gone into yet. Its causes. What does that include? Self-centeredness and all the other afflictions, because they cause our misery. They're responsible for our misery, right? Therefore, before you wish for all other sentient beings to be free from that, first you need yourself to wish to be free from it. Right? Why? First I need to understand that it sucks. Not so much suffering. I know suffering sucks. But also suffering here, there are different types of suffering. Even our limited happiness right now. We're so attached to samsara. Not to the crappy parts, not to the suffering parts. We're not attached to sickness. We're not attached to death. No, most people aren't. Maybe there's a few exceptions, who knows. But most people are not attached to what we call ordinary suffering. But we're attached to what we call true happiness in samsara, which is not true happiness at all. Just the ordinary sensory satisfaction. We know it's not going to give us lasting happiness intellectually, but it feels like it will. On an emotional level, it feels like, oh, if I just got this car, I'm going to be happy forever. If I just got that pair of jeans, if I was just with that person, I would never ask for anything more. And then a few years later, you ask for a divorce, right? So therefore, the point is, it feels as if this is the answer to all our problems. But that's why we're so busy. We have no time for Dharma practice because we're searching for this so-called, which intellectually we know it's not, but on an emotional level, we believe this is really giving us happiness. And since it doesn't last, we have to constantly change and find something else, right? This relationship didn't work out, need a new one. And then I'm so busy to find, and then, you know, there's no time to practice or get that job, get this much money, get this house, get this car. That's why we're so busy. Always somehow deep within the sense, yeah, but that's a little bit more important. That's really giving me some lasting happiness. It's, again, it's not on an intellectual level, more on an emotional level. But it's actually recognizing that even samsaric happiness, the so-called samsaric happiness, is just a temporary state of something worse. Right? I mean, eating good food when you're full is torture. It's not happiness. Eating a crappy piece of bread when you're so hungry is bliss. Why? It's got nothing to do with the object. It's got to do with, like, for instance, if you haven't eaten for days and you get a piece of dry, I'm not saying moldy, shouldn't disgust you, but like a dry piece of bread and you haven't eaten in days. Oh, you're going to devour it. It's like His Holiness the Dalai Lama's response when he asked, what is your favorite, when someone asked him, what is your favorite food? The food I eat when I'm the most hungry. It's so tasty. Ah, you're so hungry, like anything ordinary. Whereas if it's like the best sushi you can get in the world, after like a huge buffet, like you want to throw up if you're just seeing food, that most amazing piece of sushi, is it going to give you great happiness? No, it's going to add to your suffering. So why is one piece of food giving you that bliss? Because of the suffering of hunger that was there before. The stronger the suffering, the greater your bliss in the absence of it. To give you another example. You hit your leg and suddenly, no, your leg is not so bad. Your leg and your right arm, if you're right-handed. And if you're left-handed, it's your left hand. You hurt them and suddenly you can no longer use them. Everything that was previously so easy becomes a huge effort. You're in pain and you can no longer eat your favorite food. Having a shower is like, I need to call someone or whatever, right? So, on top of our ordinary kind of like, yeah, life is kind of ordinary, good days, bad days, now this happens. Now, I'm asking you, the day you wake up and you feel normal again, what is that day? It's just a good old Tuesday. Let's say it's just a Tuesday. You wake up after a week of misery and it's Tuesday and it's all gone. Are you going to be really happy? Of course you are, because of all the misery you underwent. Right? Because of all the misery. So you were like terribly sick, nauseous. You know, like this is in this particular place. It's not surprising you eat the wrong food, depending on how used to you are to the water and so forth. You get terribly sick. You feel so nauseous, right? You're throwing up. You feel sick. You feel miserable with a headache. After 1 week like that, you wake up one morning, the sun shines or it doesn't. Maybe it's just raining, and you're so happy. Right? Because of that incredible suffering before. But if every day you wake up in the same, it's just another morning and it rains, it sucks. It's the same weather, right? With one difference. Previously, you didn't suffer that greatly, now you do. And what is the result of that? What is the result of your happiness?
Sense of suffering.
Well, yes, because of your suffering. So it's the absence of something worse. Our happiness is really just the absence of something worse. And we're always trying to avoid that. That's why we always have to run around. We have to constantly change the situation. I've said that many times. You can't just lie in bed. I mean, if I ask you, what's your favorite activity? And you say, lie in bed. And I give you as a homework, you have to lie in bed until Thursday. It's going to happen, right? Maybe 7, 8 hours, right? You can bear it. And then you're going to be in so much pain. It's going to be so boring. It's going to be so terrible. So you have to change. I mean, even, and again, something, sorry for me saying it all the time, Just sitting here, you have to switch, you have to shift position because you're going to be in pain. Sooner or later, we all have to be shifting because our existence is such, if we don't change anything at all, we're going to suffer. Right? If we don't move, we don't do anything, we're going to suffer. So you get hungry, you get thirsty, you get pain, you get bored. It's going to be unbearable. So we have to tiptoe, we have to run around, change the situation. Get some food, stop eating, get food again, go to the bathroom, stop eating, stop, like constantly. So do it again and again, all day long. Have a shower, stop the shower. I mean, no one is going to ask you to have a shower for 5, you probably dissolve. I don't know how, but when you start dissolving, but at some point you start dissolving, your skin is probably going to tear. Yeah, after like a 24-hour shower or whatever. So shower, okay, a few minutes until you're bored, you're done, next thing. So our entire life is spent jumping from one to the next, just not to experience suffering. So anything you can come up with, which is according to you, emotionally feels like true happiness, you won't be able to give it to me. Watching movies, being with friends, yes, all right. Watching movies for the next 2 days, that's all you have to do. Watching movies. Be with your best friends. I'll lock you into a room with your best friends for the next 48 days. And see what happens then. Are you still best friends when I open the door? You see? The thing is, in a certain measure, it gives us a relief from something worse. Boredom or whatever. But because we have to be constantly on our toes, because our existence is not in the nature of happiness. It's in the nature of suffering. As long as we have a self-centered mind, it's as simple as that. As long as we have a root misconception of reality and a self-centered mind, we can never have true peace of mind. No matter what you do externally. No way. If you don't have a self-centered mind, then even if you live in the desert, you'll be so happy. Without friends, without anything, you'll be happy. You may not survive, but you'll be happy. You die happily. Right? It's all about this emotional state. That is so important. We actually have to understand that. Our dharma practice is crap if we don't understand that. Sorry for that, but it's useless. That's the basics. To understand that samsara, yes, we may as well enjoy this. I mean, I'm not saying stop eating good food. No, by all means, eat it. But eat it not with the wrong expectation, not with a realistic expectation, with a realistic, that this is not going to give you lasting happiness. Right? Enjoy it for what it is. Enjoy a relationship for what it is. Our problem are not the objects of samsara that we call happy experiences. Our problem is we hold on to them. We try to control them. We try to control other people. We can't let go. And that's where our trouble starts. We're mainly attached to this I and my own happiness. This being the root anyway. Okay, anyway, we get more into this. But as you said correctly, yes, before we can generate great compassion, we need to have renunciation. I need to have the wish to overcome samsara, to be free from this limitation. Before I would others, if I don't wish it for myself, why would I want it for someone else? Right? If I love samsara, and if I love others, I would want them to experience samsara. Therefore, before I can generate great compassion, I need to first understand if for others to be free, to have the wish for others to be free from suffering, which means all types of samsaric sufferings, all the limitations of samsara, I first need to wish this for myself, and that's renunciation. But that doesn't make me a hero. It doesn't mean I enter the foundational vehicle, because I'm doing it in preparation for great compassion. I'm doing it in preparation for entering the universal vehicle. Whereas here, the kind of renunciation is, all I want is personal liberation. That's it. For the time being, that's all I want. That's also a type of renunciation. And usually the texts don't distinguish between the different types of renunciation. They don't do it, but it's implied. So a hero is someone who's got that social kind of personality and is someone who wishes to be free from samsara, and that's it, nothing more. Okay, so the moment they generate this renunciation, they have entered the path of the foundational vehicle and they became heroes. To attain liberation, heroes advance through 5 stages. Most of you know this, but just to say it again. You have a hero's path of accumulation, then preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, path of no more learning. Pretty straightforward, 5 stages. The path of no more learning is when you attain that liberation that you're motivated to get, like your renunciation basically means to be free from whatever is in the way to attain that liberation. That's what renunciation here means. So upon reaching the 3rd level, the path of seeing, they directly realize emptiness for the first time. Okay, for those who are totally new, this may be a little bit difficult, but yeah, it's basically they understand ultimate reality directly. They experience that for the first time. Not on the first 2 levels, but now on this level. And from there, they advance through 8 levels on path of seeing and the path of, the last path of meditation and path of no more learning. There are 8 levels, such as entering what's called stream entry, abiding in the result of stream entry, and so forth, which will be explained later. So 8 levels, okay. And on the path of seeing, heroes begin to eliminate the afflictive obstructions, what keeps us in samsara. That includes our root misconception of reality, attachment, anger, all our mental afflictions. But in this case here, together with the potential for them to arise again, together with the seeds, those are eliminated, the intellectually acquired ones, on the path of seeing. Okay, what does that mean actually? The meditative equipoise is directly realizing emptiness on the path of seeing eliminates all the intellectually acquired afflictions and their seeds. So what are they? Negative states of mind, ignorance, attachment, aversion, that are not inborn, but that arise through exposure to cultural, religious, philosophical, and scientific views. They are based on and reinforced by our innate afflictions, but they're coarser and therefore easier to overcome. So, views of a self that are unrealistic, right? First of all, we perceive there to be there's of course a self that exists, but the self that I perceive, when I think of myself, I perceive there to be something very concrete. And that concrete thing is more important than your I. From my perspective, I have a very strong sense. There's this I have to protect. And this I, because you're not going to protect it, I have to protect it. And you're not going to look after my happiness, I'm mainly responsible for it. So therefore, I cherish myself more than others. That's just a natural response. We're not bad people. We're not naturally bad people. The thing is, we perceive often a very solid, concrete self, and that naturally leads to the sense, oh, I need to look after it. I need to gratify it. I need to look after it. So that exaggerated sense of a self, it doesn't accord with reality. That's what the whole text is about. Of course you exist. Of course the I exists. But not in the exaggerated way it appears to our mind, which then gives rise to all the other trouble. So the point is here, that kind of self, which is innate, that sense of an innate sense of this I, of that exaggerated sense of an I, we're born with that, but then on top of this innate sense, there's whole philosophies about the self, the soul, right? In Christianity, there seems to be some kind of soul, some kind of real self. I don't know, Shubham knows this much better. The ego and the super ego, and then there's the third one, right?
8 ego and super ego.
Which 8 egos?
8 ego and super ego.
8 ego and super ego. So Sigmund Freud talks about 3 types of selves. So all based on the sense there is something very solid, but then based on that you have scientific, psychological kind of explanations. In the Indian tradition, there are also philosophical systems that very much talk about an Atman, some self. So when we first realize emptiness or the lack of such a self and the lack of any concrete existence, when we directly realize that, we get rid of these intellectually acquired afflictions. Okay? But the innate ones, they are difficult. So this is true for a hero, this is true for a bodhisattva, this is true for all of them. These steps are all the same in the Prasangika, in the highest philosophical school of Tibetan Buddhism. And we're studying the high school. So, on the path of seeing, you get rid of these intellectually acquired ones. Then, on the path of meditation, as a hero, you get rid of the inborn ones, the ones that you already have when you were born, that are not acquired from external influences, and they are subtler and harder to remove, and therefore cannot be eliminated through a single meditative equipoise on the path of seeing. On the path of seeing, you enter into direct realization of emptiness, and they're gone. You arise and you're free from them. That realization has eliminated them. Because you've only had them for one life. You only got used to them, you familiarized with them for one life. They were basically, through the influence of external forces, you developed them, but then you still have the one that you're born with, and that is very difficult to get rid of. For that, you need to move on to the next level, when your understanding of emptiness is stronger. Your realization that mind itself has become more powerful, let's say more powerful. So then you eliminate the subtler ones, divide it into 9 types. You divide them into 9 types. They're distinguished by the degree of their coarseness and subtlety, and they must be gradually overcome, stage by stage, on the path of meditation. Then, this is what I added later. This is not in your version. I only added it this morning, but I'll give you the newer version. Never mind, you can add it. Even if you have a printout, you can later on write it. It's just a sentence or 2. Actually, these 9 types are also classified into the different states of existence in samsara. The desire realm, the form realm, the formless realm. There are different realms of existence, and each one of them has their specific afflictions. And we all have the seeds, the potential for those afflictions to arise. If we're born there, then different types of attachments arise. You have a certain type of attachment as a human being. But if you're born as an animal, you have, again, a different type of attachment. It's all part of our mind. The potential for those to arise is ever there. We have the potential for all sorts of positive states of mind, of course, but also the negative ones. And they can be removed, because they're not in the nature of the mind, the negative ones. So there are 9 different innate ones that are eliminated step by step. Okay, 9 different types that gradually overcome on the path of seeing. Again and again, you enter into meditative equipoise, you get rid of one. You rise again, go back again, do some other practices, go back again, and so forth. Now, I'm just racing through it quickly. This is, of course, what we'll study as we go along. But just to have like a rough sense, okay, on the path of meditation, you get rid of the innate ones. Okay? Just that much. It's a little bit difficult here because it's just a short summary. But the point is that you get rid of all of these. You progress through these 9 types across the 3 realms. And then when the most subtle, namely the 9th type of the innate afflictions, when they have been eliminated, have been completely eradicated, together with the potential for them to rise again, you're a hero arhat. Okay? So, in short, I haven't even mentioned the path of accumulation, the path of preparation. Those are basically preparatory stages. On the path of seeing, when you realize the ultimate nature of all phenomena for the first time, you get rid of the intellectually acquired afflictions, all the mental folds, you get rid of them on that level, and then you move on to the path of meditation, and then on 9 different levels, you get rid of the innate ones. Done. Right? In short, that's how you become self-liberated. Of course, it's much more complicated than I made it sound, but just to get the basic idea. We have to understand reality, experience it directly, have a direct experience of that, and then we get rid of all our afflictions. For a very simple reason. Why? Because all our afflictions, they perceive the opposite of emptiness. They perceive of an inherent objective I and an inherent objective world. We have the sense this world we perceive does not exist because of our mind. No, our mind perceives this world that exists independent of ourselves. We have a sense there's a real I there that has nothing to do with our mind, it's nothing to do with perception, and there's a real world out there, good and bad and everything, nothing to do with the mind. That's our misperception. That's the reason why we suffer. And that gives rise, most importantly, and we'll get to this on the next few pages, first of all, there's a sense there's this solid I. I'm here and you're there. Your happiness has nothing to do with me. Yours is yours and mine is mine. Right? And myself has nothing to do with my mind. There's really an I. If I look for it, maybe I came to India to find myself. I still have to meet a traveler who's told me, oh, I found myself. Like, what is it you found? Whenever they talk about what they found, it was definitely not an I. They found what they want to do in their lives or what they find is meaningful, right? To find yourself. What does that even mean? Actually, that's why I went to India. I came here to find myself. Only to find Buddhism and be told there's nothing to be found. Right? It comes down to that. Therefore, that I we're looking for, of course the I exists, but just not the way I perceive myself. As if there was something very solid, something really there, somewhere, and that is so precious. Myself. Right? My I. And if you hurt me, if you say something, you insult me, I'm saying you insult my I. And if I were to dig deeper, how did I hurt the I? Did you cut out a piece of the I by insulting it? How did you hurt the I? There's no answer, right? I feel hurt. What is the I that is hurt? Yeah, there's a hurt feeling, okay, but that's not the I. It's my feeling, it's the feeling of the I. So that's not the I. But it feels so concrete that there's this self, right? And of course the self exists, but not in that way, in that concrete way. And because we perceive it to be there as something intrinsic within us, therefore once we understand emptiness, which is basically understanding nothing exists intrinsically in such an independent, intrinsic way, then that mind that perceives of an inherent I, which is the root of all our trouble, that is gone, and our trouble is gone. It's as simple as that. Right? We perceive there of something very concrete, which just isn't realistic. And then that concrete perception, that gives rise to a sense this I is more precious than anything else, to attachment to this I, and then to anger towards those who harm this I, and attachment towards those that benefit the I. So friend, and indifference to the rest. So I like you, I don't like you, I don't care. All comes down to this. It's nothing to do with the person, it has to do with how this person makes me feel. Like, dislike, don't care. Always in relation to this. Doesn't matter who they are. Could be a serial killer, as long as they treat me well. Okay, I can live with it, kind of thing. I'm exaggerating slightly here, but I guess you understand, right? Okay, and once we understand that such a self doesn't exist, there's no intrinsic self that exists that way. There's no intrinsic others. There's no intrinsic anything. Well, if we that gets rid of our misconception, of course, and since the misconception gives rise to other afflictions, they can no longer arise. They're gone. from our mind. And that is true liberation. That is true liberation. Even if you sit in the worst in the worst prison in the world, whatever that is, wherever that is, it's mental liberation. And that's what we're talking about here. It's not about physical liberation, but mental liberation. And that's what a hero has attained. Okay, now I've finished pretty much the first part. Yep. It's almost easier to write it down and think, oh, that's easy. But then when I talk about it, I realize it isn't that easy. Okay, solitary realizers is the next part. If you have questions, I want to make sure you don't have questions. Otherwise, I'll continue to get through the solitary realizer one. But yeah, are there any questions so far? Yeah? I'll repeat the question for the recording.
So we were just talking about the pain that the self feels or not feels.
Mm-hmm.
So when I break my arm, the body that feels the pain is my body. Like he cannot feel the pain of my broken body. So how is that explained?
All right, she's asking a very important question. So it's like this is one of the questions basically. So we talk about a self. So there's the sense of me here and you over there, and that's exaggerated. But the moment we talk about it, okay, so I and others. There's only an I because there's others. So in terms of just, for instance, labeling, I, others. I'm actually other from your perspective, right? So what makes me more important? I'm other. From your perspective, you are I. You are the center of the universe. But then her question comes in, yeah, but I don't feel your pain. I cannot become you because I don't experience your pain. So how does that work? So here, conventional I, the one that exists, and the one we create, they're kind of in a conflict. Because we're not saying I don't exist. It's very important to understand I do exist. Of course, there is an I, in the sense there's body and mind. The aspect we're negating or denying or refuting here is an I that is more concrete than just this body and mind. An I that is perceived in such a way, or the perception of which gives rise to a sense, I'm a little bit more important. My suffering is more important. Now, I understand what you mean, because we have a sense, yeah, but I feel it and you don't feel it. So mine is more important, right? That's what she comes down to. But usually the answer to that is, it's only a problem when I put it together with my sense of I. Let me give you an example. If now modern science had developed a very incredible technique. What is that incredible technique? It's that you are now able, through AI or whatever, to give you a sense of what another person is feeling. Okay? So you put in a room and you want to know, what does it feel like for a person in some country where there's not enough food to experience this incredible hunger. So you sit down and somehow they can give you that, only for a short time, right? It's like, okay, you've got 5 seconds, we're going to show you how it feels like. And you go, oh my God, right? But you don't identify with it because you're actually just getting a sense of what the other person is experiencing. Isn't that right? In that moment, it's not yours. You're not owning it. You just get a sense, oh, this is what it feels like. Let's say you could do it. You don't identify with it. You experience it, but it's like, this is what it feels like. This would be great if we could do it for a practice of compassion. It would be amazing, right? If you don't feel lonely at all, you never feel lonely. And suddenly someone can put you in a laboratory and trigger that feeling in your mind of loneliness. Just for a few seconds. Okay, wait, are you ready? Okay, the nerves are being activated, right? There's certain nerves, of course, that are activated in the brain. They're activated, and you go, oh, this is what it feels like. Can you get a sense of how you can actually, right? I don't know whether one day this will be possible or not, but the point is, you don't worry about that. You don't worry about it because you want to get rid of it, yes, but it's not like this is mine. It's like, in a way, the person responsible for that suffering, let's say a politician was responsible for the suffering that these people in this particular country are experiencing, they're responsible. So those who experience the suffering, they probably hate that politician because it's their suffering. But in that moment when you experience the same, you don't identify with it. You're not like, this is my suffering. You just get a sense of what it feels like, but you're not necessarily hating the politician. Right? Because you're not owning it. It's not yours. Which is why the texts usually say, yes, there's a sensation. Suffering in itself, I mean, I usually give the example of eating chili. For one person it's bliss, for another person it's pain. In and of itself, it's neither blissful or painful, right? It's just a sensation. But depending on your mental attitude, your mental state, your state of mind, you experience it as pleasant or painful. That's one thing. That's just one thing I want to say. Because many of the sensations, first we think, oh, it's a pain. But when I focus on it, that sense of pain, actually, we just realize it's a pulling or something. And of course, it's necessary to do something about it because we could hurt ourselves if we don't move. Pain tells us to move. But what I'm trying to say is, in and of itself, being good or bad, it has to do with the mind. If your mouth burns, is it good or bad? It just depends, right? Your attitude, like what you prefer or not. I'm reminded of a treatment I once received by someone. I was down at Sara College and a Korean healer came, for lack of a better word, they're giving a therapy, and they put like needles in the back of your spine. No, it wasn't even needles. No, they put incense very close to certain spots. And as I was laying there, I didn't see what they were doing, and I thought they were putting a nail in my spine. And I was like, this is unbearable. Why is not everyone jumping up and running away? But I was too embarrassed to jump up and run away. But I was horrified. I was like thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? I won't be able to walk. He just put a nail into my spine. I was so convinced there was a nail in my spine, I thought it was unbearable. And then I saw, I couldn't see the other person, but they removed the curtain, and I saw it was just incense. It wasn't burning it. And suddenly I was like, oh, this is nothing. This is nothing. It's actually nice. So from then onwards, I enjoyed this treatment. I'm just giving this as an example, but it was just my mind was totally doing the job. I was literally seeing someone putting a nail into my spine, and it became unbearable. The moment the curtain was removed and I saw what they were doing, I relaxed, and that was the end of it. So it really showed me how pain has a lot to do with my own perception of someone is doing this to me, my precious spine. Someone's putting a nail in it. So it wasn't just the sensation that later on I experienced as pleasant. So all I'm saying is it doesn't go all the way. If someone cuts off your arm, I don't think I can, cuts off my arm, I don't think I find a way to go, oh, this is actually really nice. But they say, an arhat, if you cut off the arm of the right arm of an arhat and you massage the left arm, there's no sense of a difference. Because of their understanding of reality and their removal of the afflictions, it's just a sensation. It's neither positive nor negative, which is for us beyond anything we can imagine right now. That's why I use this example, which you can imagine me lying there going, oh my God. And 10 minutes later, oh, I want more. I never forget that. That was such a powerful experience when I really thought I was being crippled right there on that table. And a few moments later realizing, oops, how my mind totally, played such a big role. So I hope I wasn't too all over the place, But what I'm trying to say is, as long as there is as long as there's grasping at a self and self-centeredness, there is pain, the way we know it. If there isn't, there can't be any pain. There can't be any pain. Which in other words means any sensation we experience in a positive or negative way, mainly because of our self-centeredness, which goes so deep. Not just on an ordinary level, it goes so incredibly, it's on such a deep level that for us it's unbelievable to think that even pain and pleasure can be dependent on that. But as the very last thing I want to say is, I want to share with you this experience that I've also shared with many of you during the last term, this experiment of how we can start identifying with another person's body, even if that is not a body in the first place. Remember I told you about this experiment? You put on these goggles. Artificial reality?
Virtual reality.
That's it. Virtual reality goggles. And every time, so you're just standing there, and when you look down on yourself, you don't see your own body, you see the body of a dummy. And you let that part, like if you have those, if you wear them for long enough, for a few hours, you start to identify, because we're so used to looking down and identifying with what is down there. So let's say the dummy looks really like your body, that helps. So you look down and you identify. And so they stroke your skin, like you see someone taking a feather, and the people doing the experiments, they report back that they can actually feel it. They can feel it because they believe they must be feeling it. So they say they can feel the stroking of the feather. And then they poke them, they do different things, like gentle kind of things, like they're all very gentle, and they always report back that they can experience the touch and so forth. So it just takes some time, but sooner or later it comes. And then they show you actually the person. Totally out of the blue, they take a knife and put it into the dummy's belly, right? Just out of the blue. And I think blood comes out or whatever, I forget now. And the person wearing the virtual, they go, oh! And they experience pain, they say. That was not their belly. It's incredible. So how does that even work? It wasn't your body, but you identified with this body for so long that after doing the touch and stuff, I forget, maybe in the beginning they actually touched your actual body while touching the dummy. But then after some time, they stop touching you, they only touch the dummy and you feel it. I think that's how they start. So it takes some time for the mind to basically label my body, my body, my body. And then when the knife is inserted in that person's belly, they report experiencing pain. Isn't that fascinating? Why? Because we identify it as my body. So taking these experiments, these little kind of ideas that I just shared. So my experience of being tortured there in Sarah for a few moments until I understood, or the experience or this experiment that I just shared with you, plus, and this we don't know it's true, but anyway, the text reporting about a person who's eliminated all afflictions, whether you cut off their arm or you massage the other arm, it doesn't make any difference to them. Then I guess based on that we can get a better sense how our pain and pleasure has very much to do with that. Yeah, I think on that note, pardon?
Questions.
Oh, questions. I always ignore the online questions. I'm so sorry. All right, if you need to go, please do. I'll just continue to make sure I answer some questions. Discussion, okay. What is the name of the handout? I can't see it, only the former PDF.
We answered that.
You answered, okay. Oh yes, you did. Okay, great. All right. Oh yeah, you answered that. Seem to have lost. Same.
Down,
yeah. Does anyone know why Acharya Chandrakirti spent only one verse discussing meditative absorption? Does he have another treatise that focuses on this important subject? That comes much later. What does he just spend one verse on that? Well, that question will be on later kind of verses. This is part of the 6th chapter. I can only say that much. At the time when Acharya Chandrakirti wrote his commentary, he wrote it in mind with possibly his main disciples, the people he was around, the people he gave teachings to. Those were the ones he knew best, right? And usually there's a name for that, kind of the main disciples, the main student. In Tibetan, Chiduchawaducha, which kind of means the ones for whose purpose this text was written. I always talk about like this Chiduchawaducha, like Chiduchawa kind of means for the purpose, or for the purpose of whom you did that, basically. So these kind of disciples, it very much depended on their knowledge or their lack thereof. So oftentimes other texts already spoke about certain ideas, so why would Chandrakirti, and he knew his disciples understood that, so why was he going into that? I mean, in the same way I address certain things, knowing some of you, kind of trying to guess what you already know or not know, and then go into details on that. So in a similar fashion here, it's really like Chandrakirti had his main disciples. He was a very famous master, Nalanda master. And so he already knew what his disciple knew or not knew what they had studied. So if there are other texts, and there are other texts talking about meditative absorptions, but not just that, there's a lot of oral explanations that are easy. It's not that hard to understand them. Understanding emptiness first and the different ways based on flourish, as it's called, flourish, understanding how the mind works. You'll understand that it's possible to directly realize emptiness and therefore have that meditative equipoise. So based on that, why would he spend more than a verse knowing that this is sufficient for people to understand it? Yeah, that's all I can say. So I can't really talk about his motivation, I don't know, in the end, but that is usually the logic. Why do some authors go into one thing, but less into something else? And usually it's said, well, they had particular disciples, that's what they needed to hear. I mean, nowadays if the Buddha came, the way the Buddha taught 2,600 years ago was in accordance with what people needed to hear then. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other. If you teach that to someone today without any commentary, people go, what? There's no eye, no ear, no nose. And so like, what? Like in the Heart Sutra. Well, at the time when the Buddha was around, people perfectly understood. Nowadays, if Buddha Shakyamuni were to come now, he'd talk about atoms, he'd talk about, like what we know in the modern world. He'd use different vocabulary. You wouldn't have to learn all this Buddhist terminology. It would be the terminology you're familiar with, right? So it's the teachers, they always teach in accordance with the kind of main audience, right? Those that are interested in the Dharma at the time of the Buddha, those that were closest to the Buddha, the Buddha could talk to them in the most effective way. He couldn't influence people in the next town. He could influence these people, or influence in the sense teach them effectively. Chandrakirti was similar. He was able, not everyone, some people thought Chandrakirti is just a fraud, or they didn't follow Buddhism or whatever. So Chandrakirti couldn't really do anything. I mean, he would have liked to guide them, but he couldn't do it. They weren't interested. So his focus was mainly on his disciples, and based on that he taught in a certain way. Okay, there's a person who attains stream entry, a person who has direct realization of emptiness for the first time in the path of, or is he considered stream entry only after elimination? Okay, we get into that. This is a little complicated, the stream entry. So is a person who's directly realized emptiness for the first time and has eliminated intellectually acquired afflictions, is this person considered to be someone, a stream entry? I'll talk about this a little bit. This is part of the text. Actually, there are two levels of stream entry. There's entering into stream entry, and there's abiding in stream entry. or approaching instead of entering, but Geshe Jinpa uses the word entry. So entering into stream entry and abiding in stream entry. So stream entry, both is stream entry. Stream entry basically means to realize emptiness directly, entering that stream of direct realization. But the entry is the first moment when you eliminate these intellectually acquired afflictions, when you're eliminating them, right? It's kind of like they say, it's like throwing out the thief. They say this mind that realizes emptiness directly, it now throws out the thief. It's like getting rid of the afflictions of the mind. It throws them out. And then in the same meditative session, you've thrown them out. They're gone from your mental continuum. No longer any potential in your mind left for these afflictions to arise again. So first you had to get rid of them, and then you have to close the door. That's how they describe it. So you're meditating on emptiness the whole time. You're directly realizing emptiness the whole time. But first you're throwing out the afflictions, and then you're closing the door. That's how they usually describe it in the text. So in one meditative session, what you're realizing is emptiness in both cases. But during the first level, you're getting rid of the afflictions. During the second level, or the second phase of that direct realization, you got rid of them. And you're meditating on emptiness the whole time. You're not doing anything more. But the first part is called entering the stream entry. The second part of the same meditative session, when you've eliminated them, is abiding in stream entry. Does that make sense? So it's one meditative session, but it's like when you're kicking someone out, first you need to kick them out, and then you need to close the door. Yeah, so you're getting rid of the thief that you're doing. But although you're all doing the same, I mean, you're engaging in the activity of kicking them out, there are different levels of that. So it's a little hard to think of it when it comes to the mind. You directly realize emptiness, that's all you're doing, but your mind automatically eliminates. It's just an automatic process. The moment you experience emptiness directly, your mind will automatically get rid of these intellectually acquired afflictions and of the potential for them to ever arise again. And then there's a stage you got rid of them, so you remain still with that direct realizations until you arise from it, and now you're free from these intellectually acquired. They can no longer arise in your mind. No way. Okay, but even within that direct realization, you have first entry, getting ready to gain that result, which is the abiding. Okay, the result is stream entry, but you haven't achieved it yet when you haven't eliminated these intellectually acquired afflictions yet. Does that make sense? Yeah, that is just the first one. But the other ones, it works in the same way. It's just different things they remove. So that's stream entry, and then you have the other 4 levels. And we go into them. Lama Tsongkhapa speaks about them. At least he mentions them, and I explained them in the explanations. Also, is the direct realization of emptiness on the path of seeing the same for those on the Bodhisattva path? Yes. Yes. Realizing emptiness is the same for practitioners of the Hira or the solitary realizer vehicle, that is the foundational vehicle, and Bodhisattvas. It's all the same emptiness, but different aspiration. Just using it to be self-liberated, in the case of Hiras, that's the aspiration. So I use this bizarre term. I say like the mind realizing emptiness is like a vacuum cleaner. It's a vacuum cleaner. So the vacuum cleaner has the same ability to get rid of the dust, whatever is in the mind that is not part of the carpet. The carpet is our mind. What's not in the nature of the carpet? The dust. That's like the afflictions. So you take the vacuum cleaner and it sucks up all the dirt. First the coarser one, and then the subtler one. Now, you see that there are different levels nowadays with the vacuum cleaner, like stronger and less strong, okay? So it sucks stronger. If you put it on the first mode, it just gets rid of like the coarse stuff, right? It gets rid of that. But not the difficult to remove, not the stuff that is difficult to remove. That is like having the aspiration to become self-liberated. That is like the power, in the sense like the higher the mode, the stronger the power, right? You need more power to basically get the vacuum cleaner to be stronger. So here the power is the motivation. I want to be self-liberated. I want to overcome samsara. That is kind of the power input. If you just want to overcome samsara, you just need to overcome the obscurations that prevent you from attaining samsara. So the vacuum cleaner is on first mode. It's the vacuum cleaner does the same thing. It sucks. It sucks. I mean, not that it sucks, but it sucks off the stuff. It vacuum cleans that stuff. When you want to do it for the benefit of all sentient beings, you want to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, you want to have these special abilities, you need to remove more from your mind. You need to go deeper. You need to remove. So your realization of emptiness now is enhanced by your motivation. And of course, the merit that you accumulate by having that kind of motivation, it strengthens your vacuum cleaner. You put it on the next mode. So not only does it remove whatever is in the way to liberation, it removes more than that. Okay, so the vacuum cleaner is the same. So it's doing the same thing. It's pulling out this stuff. It's sucking in this stuff. However, the difference lies with the strength, right? That's the main difference. So they all realize the same emptiness. And they're all, on that level, they're equally strong. On the path of seeing, they all eliminate the same. They all eliminate intellectually acquired afflictions, which will be explained. What is the I that Buddhism talks about as not inherent, existent? It's labeling I on the basis of mind and body. That's the conventional I. We'll talk about this so much more, but there's no I other than my mind and body, basically. When my mind thinks, I label I think. It seems to me that not only my mind is thinking, there's also an invisible I that's thinking together with the mind, right? That's how it feels. When I say I think, it doesn't feel like only my mind is thinking. I'm thinking my mind plus the I. So it's like, here's the mind, here's the I, and they're thinking together, like two entities are thinking. But actually, we're just labeling I on the basis of the mind. We say I think when the mind thinks, right? Or I walk when the body walks. So therefore the I is labeled on mind or body. It's like when I say I touch this table. In actuality, I touch something that is not the table, right? I hit a spot here that is not the table. Is this part that I'm touching the table? No. It would be ridiculous to say this is the table. But still I can say I touch the table. Because I label table on this part. To touch the table, I don't have to touch every part of the table. That would be ludicrous. So similarly, yeah, right. I mean, even if you're trying to hug the whole table, still the inside is not touched and so forth. So it's not going to work ever. Or when you see the table, you always ever see a part that's not the table. You never see the entire table. You see the front, you don't see the back. You see the outside, you don't see the inside. And still, it's okay to say, I see the table. Because on the parts that I do see, I label table, and that's enough. So likewise, I see Shubham. I only see a part who's not Shubham. And still, it's not incorrect for me to say I see Shubham, because on the parts that I do see, I label Shubham. In order for, if Shubham was more than that, no one could see Shubham. If Shubham was like this internal little I don't see that. If Shubham was all his mind and body, I don't see all of it. So the other solution I'm left with, and we'll analyze that in more detail, is to say Shubham is just labeled. I say Shubham when I refer to his body or mind. And just seeing a part of his body is enough to say Shubham, right? And you see Shubham, but you see something totally different, right? You see Shubham, but you see his back. But we both agree if we see Shubham, even though we see something totally different. We all say we see the table, but we see something different. If there was an inherent table, an intrinsic table, none of us would see the table. right? Because if it's all the parts, no one sees that. If there's something other than the parts, no one sees that. So it'd be absurd. But this is we are just in the very beginning. This is what the whole 6th chapter is about. I mean, I could have just said wait until the 6th chapter, but that'll be a while until we get there because my handouts are so extensive. An arhat needs to eat. Of course an arhat needs to eat. Yes, the arhat exists. Of course, mind and body exist. But the arhat doesn't feel, I'm more important than you are. But I feel that way. To be totally honest, when it comes down to my and your happiness, I'll readily sacrifice yours. That's not what an arhat does. Because I perceive of not only do I perceive of a very concrete self, but I believe that self to be more precious, more important. And we get to this as part of, even in the introductory part. I'm going into that. Can renunciation be defined as a lack of attachment to worldly concerns? A lack of attachment to worldly concerns. That's interesting. To be totally have no attachment then you're already an arhat. So you have renunciation only when you're an arhat, because to be totally free from attachment to worldly concerns would mean you overcome attachment. And then you're an arhat, right? So I think you're allowed to have some attachment. I mean, otherwise it wouldn't work. You have the sincere aspiration to overcome samsara and its causes, and that is more powerful than your attachment. So you still have attachment, but right now, even if I know, for instance, something is not good for me, if my attachment is too strong, it'll win, right? That's the thing. So it's not about overcoming attachment or having no attachment for worldly concerns, but being able to control it. So it may pop up, but you go, okay, I know it's attachment, all right, mindfulness. Yeah, but this is not realistic. This is in the nature of suffering. So you don't allow yourself to be controlled by your attachment. Right now, we are controlled by our afflictions. Let's face it. Not all the time, but when strong anger is there, very difficult to control it. Even more difficult, control attachment. Very difficult. So it's not so much about getting rid of attachment to generate renunciation, but about controlling it. Does that make sense? Okay, now answer all the questions. Ooh, this was long. All right, so I won't go on for that long, but I've had a lot of rest for many months. Didn't talk much. Now I had the chance to talk for almost 2.5 hours. Anyway, it won't be that long next time. I'll keep it in check, but I'll also pay more attention to the questions online. So hopefully I've answered all these, but anyway, we're only at the beginning, so many of those will be answered. All right, now we'll continue with the handout. I've covered 10 pages, which is good. I'll do the next for next time, but what makes it so much easier is if you read in advance. And one little trick, I don't know whether you're willing to do that. Reading once is good, reading twice is better. So the thing is, like when we studied, I found when I prepared for my classes that were difficult, I read it once, I read it twice, if I had time, even the third time, without doing much more than just reading it 2 or 3 times, one after another, cup of tea in between, and it just helped to understand better. All right, now since I don't have the prayer yet, let's do it, most importantly, mentally, to take a moment to focus on whatever positive potential all of us together as a group accumulated today. May not get lost through a moment of anger, or may not ripen into something insignificant, but may instead ripen in the form of full enlightenment. May it become a cause for us to attain our fullest potential in the form of Buddhahood, not just for our own benefit, but primarily for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice evening, and I'll see you again on Thursday. I don't know whether we'll continue to be in here, because there's also a very nice classroom. So if we all fit into the classroom, it's easier with the setup. For instance, I would ask you now to put the lines